Dr. Lisa Martinez had always been fascinated by the possibility of life beyond Earth. As a child, she would spend hours staring at the night sky, wondering if someone was looking back. Now at 35, she worked at the Deep Space Communication Center, a massive facility hidden in the mountains of Chile. Her job was to listen for signals from space. But after 10 years of hearing nothing but cosmic noise, she had almost given up hope. That Tuesday morning started like any other. Lisa arrived at work with her usual cup of coffee and settled into her chair in front of the enormous array of monitors. The room hummed with the sound of computers processing data from radio telescopes around the world. Her colleagues were already deep into their routines, analyzing the endless stream of signals from distant stars and galaxies. At exactly 10:47 a.m., everything changed. The main communication array began picking up something different. At first, Lisa thought it was just interference from a satellite, or maybe a glitch in the system. But as she fine-tuned the frequency, she realized this was unlike anything she had ever heard before. The signal was clearly artificial, structured, and most shocking of all, it seemed to be directed specifically at Earth. Lisa's heart began racing as she called over her supervisor, Dr. James Park. Together, they listened as the signal became clearer and more defined. What they heard next would change human history forever. A voice emerged from the static. It was melodic, almost like someone singing, but the words were in perfect English. The voice belonged to a female, and there was something in her tone that sounded almost amused, like she was trying not to laugh. "Hello, little creatures of the third planet. I am Kiraval of the Viridian Star Collective. Your attempts to reach out to the cosmos are quite entertaining to watch." Lisa nearly dropped her coffee mug. She quickly activated the recording systems and sent an emergency alert to the facility's director. Within minutes, the entire communication center was buzzing with activity. Scientists, engineers, and military personnel rushed into the control room, all trying to process what was happening. The voice continued, seemingly unaware or unconcerned about the chaos it was causing on Earth. "I have been observing your species for some time now. Your radio signals, your space probes, your little telescopes pointing at the stars. It's all very cute, really." Dr. Park looked at Lisa with wide eyes. "This is actually happening," he whispered. "We're talking to an alien." But Kiravel wasn't finished. Her next words would sting human pride for generations to come. "I must tell you, though, that you're far too small to satisfy my species' standards for meaningful contact. Your technology is primitive. Your thinking is limited to your tiny world, and frankly, you barely qualify as a spacefaring civilization." The room fell silent except for the alien's voice continuing through the speakers. Lisa felt a mix of excitement and frustration. Here was the moment humanity had dreamed of for centuries, and their first extraterrestrial contact was basically telling them they weren't good enough. However, Kiravel continued, and Lisa could swear she heard a smile in her voice. "You are amusing enough that I've decided to have a conversation with you. Consider yourselves lucky. The Viridian Collective doesn't usually waste time with developing species." Lisa realized that someone needed to respond. The facility director nodded at her, giving her permission to be the first human to officially communicate with an alien intelligence. Her hands shook as she activated the transmission system. "This is Dr. Lisa Martinez from the Deep Space Communication Center on Earth," she began, trying to keep her voice steady. "We are honored by your contact and would like to learn more about your species and culture. We come in peace and hope for friendship between our peoples." Kiraval's laughter echoed through the communication array, a sound both beautiful and slightly condescending. "Peace and friendship, a little one. You think like children, playing dress-up and pretending to be adults. Your species still fights wars over patches of dirt on your single planet. You pollute your own air and water. You can barely get along with each other, let alone with a species that has mastered travel between the stars." Lisa felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment, but she pressed on. "We acknowledge that we have problems, but we're working to solve them. We're constantly learning and growing as a species. What could we do to prove ourselves worthy of your consideration?" There was a long pause. Lisa wondered if the connection had been lost, but then Kiraval's voice returned. this time with a tone that was slightly less mocking. Worthy? That's an interesting word choice. Tell me, Dr. Lisa Martinez, what makes your species think they deserve the attention of beings who have conquered the fundamental forces of the universe? We can manipulate gravity, travel faster than light, and reshape matter at the atomic level. Meanwhile, you're still burning fossil fuels and arguing about whether your planet is getting warmer? The truth in Kiraval's words was hard to deny. Lisa looked around at her colleagues, seeing the same mixture of wonder and humiliation on their faces. Humanity had always imagined first contact as a meeting between equals, or at least between species that could respect each other. This felt more like being lectured by a disappointing teacher, but something in Kiraval's tone suggested she wasn't entirely dismissive. Despite her harsh words, she had chosen to make contact. She was still talking to them. There had to be a reason. You're right about our limitations, Lisa admitted. But maybe that's exactly why this conversation is important. We're at the beginning of our journey to the stars. We could learn so much from you, and maybe, just maybe, our different perspective could offer something valuable in return. Interesting, Kiravel finally said. Most species we encounter either grovel for our technology or immediately become hostile when they realize how far behind they are. You're the first to suggest that being primitive might actually be an advantage. Tell me more about this perspective of yours, little Earth creature. Lisa smiled despite herself. For the first time since the conversation began, she felt like they might actually have a chance to prove themselves. The alien had called them too small to satisfy her species. But she was still here, still talking, still curious. As the day continued, it became clear that this was just the beginning of something much larger than anyone had imagined. 3 weeks had passed since that first contact, and Lisa's life had completely changed. She was now part of a special team dedicated to communicating with Kiravel, working around the clock to understand this mysterious alien and her species. The world had gone crazy with the news, but Lisa barely noticed the media frenzy outside. She was too focused on her daily conversations with the being from the stars. Every morning at exactly 9 a.m., Kiravel would contact Earth. Lisa had learned that the alien kept to a strict schedule, something that seemed important to her species. The conversations had become more frequent and longer, but they were also becoming more confusing for Lisa and her team. Good morning, tiny Earth dweller. Kiraval's familiar voice echoed through the communication room. Lisa had gotten used to being called small, though it still bothered her sometimes. Good morning, Kiravel, Lisa replied, settling into her chair with her notebook ready. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday about how you measure the worth of different species. Could you explain what you mean when you say we're too small? Kiraval's laugh was becoming familiar now, though it still carried that hint of superiority that made Lisa's teeth clench. Ah! Oh dear, Lisa, I don't mean your physical size. Your bodies are actually quite similar to ours, though perhaps a bit more fragile. When I speak of smallness, I'm talking about the size of your thinking. Lisa frowned, scribbling notes as fast as she could. Our thinking? Yes, the scope of your mental processes. Your species thinks in such tiny time frames. You make plans. For years, maybe decades, if you're particularly forward-thinking, you worry about problems that affect your single planet, your single generation. It's like watching children play in a sandbox while discussing the construction of cities. Dr. Park, who was monitoring the conversation from across the room, raised his eyebrows. Lisa could see the frustration on his face that matched her own feelings. But we do think about the future, Lisa protested. We have plans for space exploration, for colonizing other planets. We're working on solving climate change and developing new technologies. Plans spanning hundreds of years? Kiravel asked. Thousands? Do you think about how your actions today will affect beings living 10,000 years from now? Lisa paused. The honest answer was no, not really. Most human planning focused on the next generation, maybe 2 or 3 if they were being ambitious. The Viridian Collective thinks in geological time, Kiravel continued. We plan projects that will take millennia to complete. We consider the movement of entire star systems when we make decisions. Your longest-term thinking barely registers as a blip in our shortest-term planning. That sounds impossible, Lisa said. How can any living being think that far ahead? We live much longer than you do, for one thing. A young Viridian like myself has already seen 50 of your centuries pass by. Remember when your species first discovered fire? I watched your early civilizations rise and fall. From my perspective, your entire recorded history is like a single day. Lisa felt dizzy trying to wrap her head around such a lifespan. 50 centuries meant Kiraval had been alive for 5,000 years. She had personally witnessed the rise of ancient Egypt, the fall of Rome, the discovery of the Americas, both world wars, and the development of the internet. But doesn't that make everything seem meaningless? Lisa asked. If you live for thousands of years, how do you find purpose? In daily life, there was a pause, longer than usual. When Kiraval spoke again, her tone was slightly different, less confident. That's an interesting question. We focus on projects that matter on a cosmic scale. Moving stars to prevent collisions, guiding the evolution of entire species, managing the resources of galaxy clusters. These are problems worthy of our attention. But what about smaller things, Lisa pressed? About art, music, love, friendship? What about the feeling of watching a sunset or laughing with friends? Another pause. Those are temporary pleasures. They fade quickly and have no lasting impact on the universe. Lisa felt a spark of insight. Maybe that's exactly what makes them important. Maybe their temporary nature is what gives them meaning. I don't understand, Kiraval said, and for the first time. She sounded genuinely curious rather than condescending. Well, think about it, Lisa explained, getting excited as the idea formed. If you live forever and can do anything, then nothing is really special, right? But if you only have a short time, then every moment becomes precious. Every sunset could be your last, so you pay attention to it. Every friendship matters because you don't have infinite time to make new ones, Lisa could hear what sounded like thoughtful humming through the communication system. Your species creates art because you know it won't last forever, Lisa continued. You write poetry because words are fragile things that can be lost. You make music because sound dies away as soon as it's made. The fact that these things are temporary doesn't make them less important. It makes them more important. But they solve no cosmic problems, Kiraval pointed out, though her voice lacked its usual certainty. Maybe they solve the most important problem of all, Lisa said. The problem of finding meaning in existence. What's the point of rearranging stars if you can't appreciate the beauty of what you're creating? The silence that followed was the longest yet. Lisa began to wonder if she had somehow offended the alien, but then Kiraval's voice returned, softer than before. You know, Lisa, in all my centuries of existence, I've never considered that perspective. We Viridians pride ourselves on having evolved beyond such concerns. We believe we've transcended the need for temporary pleasures and emotional attachments. Maybe, Lisa said carefully, but have you transcended the need for joy? Another long pause. I will need to think about this, Kiraval said finally. Your smallness is proving to be more complex than I initially calculated. As the communication ended for the day, Lisa sat back in her chair with a strange mixture of exhaustion and excitement. She was beginning to understand that this conversation between species might be more important than anyone had realized. Maybe being small wasn't such a disadvantage after all. 2 months had passed since first contact, and Lisa noticed something surprising happening in her daily conversations with Kiraval. The alien, who had once dismissed humanity as too small, was now asking more questions than she answered. Started as lectures about human limitations had slowly transformed into genuine curiosity about Earth culture. It began with simple questions. During one of their morning talks, Kiraval asked about the music she could detect in the background of their communications. Lisa explained that it was classical music playing softly in the facility to help the staff stay calm during these historic conversations. Music for emotional regulation, Kiraval had asked, sounding puzzled. We use mathematical frequencies to optimize brain function, but this seems different. Can you explain its purpose? Lisa smiled, realizing this might be her chance to show the alien something valuable about human culture. Music isn't really about optimization. It's about feeling. Would you like me to play some examples? That conversation led to Lisa spending an entire week sharing different types of music with Kiraval. She played everything from Mozart to modern pop songs, from African drums to Japanese flutes. Each piece seemed to fascinate the alien more than the last. "This is remarkable," Kiravel said after hearing a blues song. "The musician is expressing sadness, but the listeners find pleasure in hearing it. This seems contradictory, yet somehow it works. That's because the music helps us feel less alone," Lisa explained. "When someone else expresses what we're feeling, it connects us. It reminds us that we're not the only ones who experience pain or joy or love." Kiraval was quiet for a long time. "We eliminated such inefficient emotions from our species long ago. Pain serves no purpose once you have advanced medical technology. Love creates favoritism that interferes with logical decision-making. But doesn't that make life kind of empty?" Lisa asked gently. "We believed it made life more efficient," Kiraval replied. But her voice carried a note of uncertainty. As the weeks continued, Lisa began sharing other aspects of human culture. She read poetry to Kiraval, describing how humans used words to paint pictures and express feelings that couldn't be communicated any other way. She explained art, showing digital images of paintings and sculptures that served no practical purpose except to make people think and feel. Kira-Val seemed especially fascinated by the concept of storytelling. "You create fictional narratives about events that never happened," she said. "But your species treats these stories as important. Why?" Lisa thought carefully about her answer. "Stories help us understand ourselves and each other. They let us experience different lives and perspectives safely. They teach us lessons about right and wrong, about courage and love and sacrifice. We have databases containing all factual information," Kiravel noted. "Surely that is more useful than fictional tales." "Maybe," Lisa said. "But facts tell us what happened. Stories tell us what it means." In return for these cultural lessons, Kiraval began sharing aspects of Viridian civilization. She described technologies that could reorganize matter at the atomic level, ships that traveled between stars in days rather than years, and cities that floated in space, powered by captured energy from black holes. But as impressive as these achievements were, Lisa noticed something missing from Kiravel's descriptions. There was no mention of art, music, literature, or anything that existed purely for joy or beauty. The Viridian civilization seemed to be all function and no feeling. "Don't you ever do things just because they're fun?" Lisa asked one day. "Fun?" Kiravel repeated the word like she was tasting something strange. "We find satisfaction in solving complex problems and achieving objectives." "Is that what you mean?" "Not exactly," Lisa laughed. "Fun is doing something that makes you happy without any goal except enjoyment, like dancing or playing games or watching funny movies." Lisa spent the next hour trying to explain the concept of humor to an alien who had never experienced laughter for pure joy. She told jokes, described comedy shows, and explained how humans found entertainment in the absurd and unexpected. "Species intentionally seeks out confusion and surprise?" Kiravel asked, sounding genuinely baffled. "When it's safe confusion," Lisa explained. "When we know we're not in real danger, our brains enjoy being puzzled and then understanding the solution. It's like mental exercise, but fun." As their conversations deepened, Lisa began to see changes in Kiravel's communication style. The alien's voice carried more warmth, more curiosity, and less of that superior tone that had marked their early talks. Sometimes Kiravel would ask Lisa to repeat a song or a poem, claiming she wanted to study its structure, but clearly enjoying the experience. One day, Kiravel surprised Lisa with an admission that changed everything between them. "I must confess something to you, Lisa," the alien said, her voice unusually soft. "When I volunteered for this first contact mission, it wasn't just because the collective needed someone to assess your species. I volunteered because I was curious about what we might have lost in our evolution." Lisa felt her heart skip a beat. This was the most personal thing Kiravel had ever shared. "You see," Kiravel continued, "we Viridians are incredibly advanced. But we've noticed something troubling in recent millennia. Our birth rates have declined. Our citizens seemed less motivated to pursue new projects. We achieve our goals, but we don't celebrate our victories. We become efficient, but we've also become hollow. You're missing the joy, Lisa said quietly. Perhaps Kiravel agreed. Your species, for all its limitations, seems to possess something we've forgotten how to access. Find wonder in simple things. You create beauty for its own sake. Form deep connections with others, based on emotion rather than utility. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes. And you think that might be what your people are missing? I'm beginning to think, Kiravel said slowly, that in our quest to become perfect, we may have become perfectly incomplete. As their communication ended that day, Lisa realized their relationship had fundamentally shifted. No longer was this just first contact between species. It had become a friendship between two individuals who were teaching each other what it meant to be truly alive. 5 months into their friendship, Lisa had grown comfortable with her daily conversations with Kiravel. What once felt like walking on eggshells around a superior being had become as natural as talking to an old friend. The alien had shared so much about Viridian technology and culture that Lisa sometimes forgot she was speaking across the vastness of space to someone from another world. On this particular Tuesday morning, something different happened that would change everything. Between their species forever, Kiravel was describing a stellar engineering project where people had been working on for the past 3 centuries. They were slowly moving a dying star to prevent it from going supernova and destroying several inhabited planets in nearby systems. The calculations are incredibly complex, Kiravel explained, her voice carrying the pride that Lisa had learned. To recognize when the alien discussed Viridian achievements, you must account for gravitational effects across 17 different star systems, the orbital mechanics of 43 planets, and the migration patterns of 6 different spacefaring species. Lisa listened intently, taking notes as always. But as Kiravel described the technical details, something caught her attention. The way the alien described the star's behavior reminded Lisa of something she had seen before, something completely unrelated to astronomy. Wait, Lisa interrupted, which had become acceptable between them over the months. When you describe how the star's energy pulses change as you move it, it sounds like something I've seen before. Oh, Kiravel sounded curious. What does it remind you of? Lisa smiled, thinking back to her childhood. My grandmother used to paint watercolors. She taught me that when you blend 2 colors on wet paper, they create these amazing patterns. As they spread into each other, the way you describe the star's energy interacting with your gravitational field sounds exactly like watching blue and yellow paint create green swirls on canvas. There was silence on the communication channel. Lisa worried she had said something wrong by comparing advanced stellar engineering to simple art. Could you explain this more? Kiravel asked, her voice carrying an intensity Lisa hadn't heard before. Lisa spent the next hour describing color theory, how artists understood the way different hues interacted, blended, and influenced each other. She explained how painters used these interactions to create emotion and movement in their work, how they could make a viewer's eye travel across a canvas by understanding the natural flow of color relationships. What you're describing, Kiravel said slowly, sounds like a form of quantum harmonic theory. I don't know what that means, Lisa admitted. It's a mathematical principle we use in our most advanced technologies. The idea that certain frequencies and energies create resonance patterns when they interact. But we've always approached it from a purely mathematical perspective. Lisa felt a flutter of excitement. What if you approached it like an artist instead? I don't understand. Lisa thought carefully about how to explain her idea. Artists don't just know that blue and yellow make green. They understand that the temperature of the blue affects what kind of green you get. They know that the texture of the paper changes, how the colors blend. They feel their way through the process, making adjustments based on what looks and feels right, not just what the theory says should happen. You're suggesting we apply intuitive methods to stellar engineering? Sounded skeptical but intrigued. I'm suggesting that maybe your mathematical approach is missing something. Maybe there's a pattern in how that star's energy behaves that you could see if you looked at it like an art piece instead of a math problem. Lisa could almost hear Kiravel thinking through the communication silence. Finally, the alien spoke, and her voice was filled with an excitement Lisa had never heard before. Lisa, I need to run some calculations. Could we continue this conversation tomorrow? The next morning, Kiravel's voice practically vibrated with energy when she contacted Earth. Lisa, you were right when I approached the Stellar Movement Project. With your artistic perspective, I discovered something we had completely missed. The star's energy patterns weren't just following our gravitational manipulation. They were creating harmonic resonances that we could work with instead of against. What does that mean? Lisa asked, caught up in her friend's excitement. This means we can move the star in half the time with a tenth of the energy expenditure. But more importantly, it means we've been thinking about this all wrong for 3 centuries. We've been trying to force the universe to bend to our will when we should have been learning to dance with it. Lisa felt goosebumps on her arms. You discovered this just by thinking about it differently.
More than that,
Kiravel said, her voice growing serious. I shared your perspective with the engineering team, and they found similar patterns in dozens of our other projects. Systems we thought we understood completely suddenly revealed hidden layers of complexity and beauty. When viewed through this artistic lens, Lisa sat back in her chair stunned. A simple comment about her grandmother's paintings had led to a breakthrough in technology that was beyond her understanding. How did you see this connection? Kiravel asked. My people have studied quantum harmonics for millennia, but none of us made this correlation. Lisa thought about the question seriously. It'd be because we're small enough to notice the details. When you're thinking about moving stars and managing galaxies, you might miss the little patterns that remind you of paint on paper. Or maybe, Kiravel said thoughtfully, your smallness allows you to see beauty in places where we only see problems to solve. Lisa smiled. Maybe being too small to satisfy your species' expectations isn't such a bad thing after all. Lisa, Kiravel said, her voice warm with affection. I'm beginning to think that your species isn't too small for anything. You're exactly the right size to see what we've been missing. As their conversation continued, Lisa realized that something fundamental had shifted between their peoples. Humans were no longer the inferior species seeking approval from their advanced neighbors. They had become partners in a dance of discovery that neither species could perform alone. 1 year had passed since that first contact, and Lisa could hardly believe how much the world had changed. The revelation about artistic thinking had opened doors that nobody on Earth could have imagined. What started as humanity being dismissed as too small had transformed into the most important partnership in galactic history. The Viridian Collective had officially requested a permanent cultural exchange program with Earth. More surprisingly, they had asked specifically for Lisa to be humanity's first ambassador to their civilization. As she prepared for this incredible journey, she reflected on how far both species had come. The changes on Earth were remarkable. Kiravel's people had shared clean energy technologies that solved the climate crisis almost overnight. Diseases that had plagued humanity for centuries were now easily treatable with Viridian medical advances. Food scarcity became a thing of the past when alien agricultural techniques could grow crops in any environment. But the most amazing changes weren't in technology. They were in how the Viridians themselves had transformed.
Lisa.
I have something wonderful to show you, Kiravel said during one of their final Earth-based conversations. The collective has created something new, inspired by your people's approach to life. Through the communication system, Kiravel transmitted images that took Lisa's breath away. The Viridians had built something they called a Wonder Garden, a massive space station that served no practical purpose except to be beautiful. It contained art galleries, music halls, and spaces designed purely for contemplation and joy. We realized that all our technological advancement meant nothing if we couldn't appreciate the beauty of what we'd created, Kiravel explained. Your species taught us that efficiency without joy is just another form of emptiness. Lisa wiped tears from her eyes as she looked at the images. The Wonder Garden was more beautiful than anything she'd ever seen. But what moved her most was knowing that beings who had forgotten how to find joy were learning to celebrate life again. That's not the most important change, Kiravel continued. We've started teaching our children about art and music and storytelling. For the first time in millennia, young Viridians are choosing careers in creative fields instead of just engineering and science. They're writing poetry, composing songs, and creating sculptures that serve no purpose except to make others smile. Incredible, Lisa said, her voice thick with emotion. There's more, Kiravel said, and Lisa could hear the smile in her voice. Our birth rates have increased for the first time in 1,000 years. Our citizens report higher levels of life, satisfaction. Depression and anxiety, problems we thought we had solved through genetic modification, have actually decreased when we reintroduced emotional expression and creative pursuits. Lisa laughed through her tears. You discovered that happiness isn't a problem to be solved. It's a way of being to be experienced. Exactly. And it's all because of your smallness, as I once called it. Your ability to find meaning in temporary things. To create beauty without purpose. To love without logic. These aren't flaws in your species. They're features that we desperately needed to learn. As Lisa prepared to board the first human vessel designed with Viridian technology for her journey to their home system, she thought about how this adventure had started. A year ago, she was just a scientist, listening for signals from space. Now she was an ambassador carrying the hopes and dreams of two species. The ship itself was a perfect symbol of their partnership. It used Viridian engineering to travel faster than light, but it was designed with human aesthetics in mind. The walls displayed rotating art galleries featuring work from both civilizations. The common areas were built for socializing and celebration, not just efficiency. Are you ready for this? Dr. Park asked as they walked toward the launch bay. I had been chosen to lead the Earth side of the exchange program while Lisa was away. I don't think anyone could be ready for something like this, Lisa replied honestly. But I'm excited to see what we can learn from each other next. Kiraval's voice came through Lisa's personal communicator. Lisa, I'm waiting for you at the docking station. I can't wait to show you our world through new eyes, eyes that know how to see beauty in small things. As the ship lifted off from Earth, Lisa looked back at her home planet through the viewing port. It looked so small from space, just a tiny blue dot in the vastness of the universe. But that smallness no longer felt like a limitation. It felt like a strength. Her species had proven that being too small to satisfy someone's expectations wasn't a failure. It was an opportunity to show them something they never knew they were missing. Humans had taught an ancient, advanced civilization how to laugh, how to cry, how to find wonder in a sunset and meaning in a moment. You know what's funny? Lisa said to herself as Earth grew smaller in the distance. What's that? Came Kiraval's voice through the communicator. Said we were too small to satisfy your species, but we ended up being exactly the right size to complete you. Kiravel's laughter filled the ship, warm and genuine and full of joy. Lisa, my dear friend, you were never too small. We were just too big to see what we were missing. Thank you for teaching us how to be perfectly, beautifully and complete again. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light travel, it's carrying Lisa toward adventures she couldn't even imagine. She smiled, knowing that sometimes the best things come in small packages. And sometimes being told you're not enough is exactly the invitation you need to show the universe how much you truly have to offer. The stars ahead looked brighter than ever before, and Lisa couldn't wait to see what wonders awaited in the vast, beautiful smallness of the cosmos.